So it's my great privilege to be with you all tonight. How I've ended up in New Ulm, you may be questioning deeply, and why here in the middle of the centre of America, I could probably say confidently, and I'm sure you would agree with me. So a little bit of an explanation of how I came here, and I'm going to tell you a wee story. So back in 2021, during COVID, you may have heard that thing called COVID, there was a competition that was run in New Zealand. Our local bishops, they were running a competition, and a priest in my parish, now a bishop, John Adams, he said, "Hey Damien, have you heard about this competition the bishops are running?" And I said, "No, Father, I have not." He said, "Apply for it." I said, "Okay, Father, no problems." So by the time I received the paper, I gave the diocesan office a ring. And they said, "Damien, yes, you can submit it, but you have to have it in by 4:30 today." And it was 2:30. And we need a full theological explanation with it. And I thought, okay, Holy Mary, Mother of God, let's go. So there'd been an image that had been sitting with me for about 5 or 6 years. And a few quick doodles, you could say, and a bit of a explanation. I emailed it off to the diocese. Well, I heard nothing. Anyway, at Christmas time, I'd visited, he had just been made Archbishop that day, which I had no idea. But our Archbishop in New Zealand, we're a small country, we've got 6 bishops and 1 Archbishop. So just to give you some perspective of how big we are. So I arrived in the office and the Archbishop said, "Congratulations, you've won the competition." I said, no, writing please, and then I'll believe you. So yes, so I confirmed. There was a minor thing that they hadn't told me, some small print in the competition, was that they were looking for our national Marian image. So what that proceeded to happen for me was, over the next year I spent I did a full immersion. So what you may not be aware of in New Zealand is that our country is, we're connected by a treaty. So we don't have a constitution in New Zealand, which may scandalise a lot of you, I know, but we have agreed by a treaty. So we have got the Indigenous people made a treaty with the Crown, and it was agreed upon that there would be some dialogue. So from that moment on, I did a full immersion into the native Indigenous culture of New Zealand, looking at both aspects and seeing how on earth we can fuse a piece of dialogue into this. So yeah, as I spent that time, I had the privilege of kind of listening and hearing the needs of the whole community around New Zealand and the tribes, hearing the pain, and then from there developing something. So the fruit of this conversation will pop up on the screen in any second, was Kohata Maria Wahine, which translates to Holy Mary, Mother of God. So this is our national Marian image. Why am I telling you this story? I will give you one, I will explain in a moment. So what happened with this image was, with the process that I underwent, she did a full pilgrimage around the whole country. So during COVID, you couldn't actually get out to places because there was restrictions. So our bishops had the wisdom to go, if they can't come to her, she will come to you, which was incredible. So Our Lady during the process of painting, after I completed the image, she went on a full pilgrimage around the whole country. Every single parish around the country was consecrated during COVID, bear in mind. And then on the last week of the pilgrimage, she entered the church. A minor detail that they forgot to tell me was that when the image entered our church in New Zealand, the whole church was elevated to National Marian Shrine. And this image is our National Marian image. So I'll give you a wee bit of an explanation of her just briefly. So if you can see here on this one, when I reference myself to the Kiwis, I'm sure you guys, when I say Kiwi, what's the first thing that comes up? Okay, thank you. That fruit's named after our national bird. So kiwis are grown in New Zealand and we produce your kiwis. So you're familiar with our kiwi, but not quite the bird. So the kahu kiwi is this brown little bird, and the cloak has formed from what they do is when a kiwi bird dies, it's our national treasure, they pluck it out and it's rounded like that. And then they remove all its feathers and they turn them upside down. And when they carefully place them all together, when they move, the whole cloak moves. And it shows the wairoa, the spirit of the kiwi, is alive. And I thought, brilliant. So through the inspiration of God, we put the kahu kiwi on Jesus. And then he's holding the book of the Gospels. That's the book which our first Catholic bishop presented to and used for evangelization, so the living word of God. And then she's eyeballing you in this one because in the culture, in Māori culture, they have a call. So on the maraes, a marae is a meeting house. The two meeting houses will meet, and they would often send a woman out from the two different tribes, and they would call to each other. And essentially they're saying, are you bringing war or are you bringing peace? So they'll be calling. If it was peace, they'd drop a fern like she's holding and they'll pick it up. And if it was war, it wouldn't be too good. So the reason why we say that is that she is in the mode of calling. So she's calling on behalf of God the Father, the communion of the saints, and all of heaven to come and intercede and come to know the Father, come to Jesus. So she's calling them, leading us to Jesus. And then you can see her halos are joined with Christ as well. And the other little beautiful thing in here is that around her neck you can see there's a little green carving that she wears. And this represents the unborn child. So she's not just protectress of life, but she's protectress of all of us. And the cloak she wears is called a kurawai, and under her kurawai we can take refuge and she'll protect us. So the love of the mother towards us is beautiful. So why am I telling you about this image? And why am I in New Ulm explaining this to you? You may wonder. About a year and a half ago, I remember it very clearly. I was looking through my inbox and my WhatsApp buzzed. And I opened it up and I got a text from my Archbishop saying, Damien, I've met this bishop in America. One thing I ask is just say yes. I received a beautiful email from Bishop Chad saying, Dear Damien, I have seen Kohata Maria and she speaks to me. And we would love to have some dialogue and a conversation about doing something in New Ulm for my diocese, LA the Prairies. And I thought, interesting, okay. My first thought was, no, I don't want another project. No, not now, Lord, please not today. But, as I said, under holy obedience, if I didn't, I would be paying for it. So, anyway, so I was apprehensive, and I must admit it did take me a little while to respond back to the diocese. And then my PA, or EA, I think you guys call it here, she sent a response to the diocese on my behalf. Little did I know. Thanks be to God. And not long after that, the tickets appeared in my inbox. I hopped on the plane and started my journey to New Ulm. So last time I was here, I had the incredible opportunity I landed straight in, and I had the beautiful opportunity to go around the diocese and hear the needs of the community here, which was really important. So Bishop Chad organised some meetings. I know some of you here were present at some of those meetings, so it's lovely to see you. And Bishop Chad said, look, we want to develop an image that relates to the people here, for people to understand Mary in a unique way that is specific to here. For me, something really important, an important part of my job is I come and I listen. And I wanted to absorb your charism, the smells, your food, your culture, what authentically makes you you as a diocese. What is your essence? And what is the spiritual life in New Ulm? No pressure. So from that, what I discovered was an incredible community of faith. The heart of your community is phenomenal here. And the most incredible landscape. The only reason I was familiar with New Ulm area was, as a child, I had grown up with Little House on the Prairie, as you may know, and we watched all the series. So when I drove past Walnut Grove, I have to admit I was kind of fanboying, going, oh my gosh, it's there. So believe it or not, even down south, we have got it. I said to Bishop, hey, I think it'd be a great opportunity to start doing some drawings. So I did a few wee doodles on paper and we took it around. I'm sure some of you here saw them. But then I said to Bishop, let's see what she looks like. So I said, do you have some paper? He's like, yes, I've got some paper. So the Bishop pulls out some paper, lays it on the dining room table. I said, Bishop, do you have some charcoal or some drawing pencils or something? He said, no pencils. He said, but I got a green egg. I said, oh, brilliant. So the Bishop pulls out some charcoal from the barbecue. We give it a bit of a dust off and we start drawing. So over the next 3 nights during my meetings, I had the opportunity to start developing the theology and capturing the essence of what was happening here through the charcoal from the green egg, which was amazing. So what happened was I came back to New Zealand and then sort of sat with her and kind of thought, right, how's this going to work? The painting officially started on the feast day of Our Lady of the Rosary. So it's been quite an interesting journey, really. So on the feast day of the Lady of the Rosary was the first day that paint touched the board, and you could say the conception of the painting happened that day. So since October through to May 13th this year, I have been painting. I haven't really had a summer. Bear in mind, I'm coming from the other end of the world. We don't deal in feet, we don't deal in inches. I wouldn't tell you what a yard is. It's just, we deal in centimeters and kilos, and different times. So we're 17 hours ahead of you guys. So I'm living in the future. So essentially, we are 7 hours ahead a day behind, if that makes sense. So it's a bit of a challenge. So the Bishop and I were having conversations at interesting hours, but trying to get the formation. So linking from this moment, from Kohata Maria, it really is my privilege to introduce to you your image, Our Lady of the Prairies. Thank you. So what I'd like to do is actually explain to you your image, your heart, your prayers, your voice, in a way that has been transferred to here. So just a little disclaimer, she's actually about twice the size of this. So this is just her, but she's a little bit big to get around. So the Bishop wanted a piece that was rich in theology, rich in teaching, and a piece that can be used for evangelization, and a piece that uniquely identifies this area, our area, New Ulm, in a way that you guys can relate. So if you see she's standing, Our Lady stands on the moon and she stands in the darkness. So you might go, why did you do her in white? It's a question, I know you're asking it. So the white color represents that she is the Immaculate Conception. So she is completely radiant, that she is the Ark of the Covenant, the symbol of hope. From Luke 1 chapter 1, 28, hail full of grace. So she is full of the Holy Spirit, radiating the light of Christ. So the way I'm going to walk you through the painting is in the figure of an 8. So I'm going to take you on a journey through the heart of our church and then leading it back into it. So we start up the top here. So we start with Our Lady holds the wheat in her hand. So we've got the 12 stems of the wheat for the 12 apostles. Also the 12 tribes of Israel. But the Bishop actually sent me a photo of all the different wheat varieties in your area. But if you think about it, she's also holding in her hands the seed of faith for your communities. the hearts of your communities. The other thing you might notice is that Jesus and Mary look at you. So with Our Lady, her gaze is that of a mother, of a queen mother. She's delicate, motherly, yet firm. So the painting has been designed that in the chapel that she'll be going, you'll be seeing her from this side. So when you start from there, she'll capture your eyes, and then when you move to the center, she hands you literally over to Christ, and Christ will lock gaze with you, and it's the God of mercy and justice. Because if you think about it, these times, it's not the time for Christ calling. This is a time of challenge. As I know, especially in your country, there's a lot of challenges that are going on. So Christ's face, if you can see, there's a light face and a dark side to Christ's face. So the reflection's light and dark. So you've got Christ in the seat. So Our Lady's holding him in the seat of mercy and justice. So he's also king and eternal high priest. That's why his hand is raised in blessing. So his hands raised in blessing. So he's got the two fingers for his human and divine nature. And then in Eastern iconography, they would join it like that. And they used to do the blessings like that to show the Trinity. So it's a Trinitarian symbol too that he's presenting before us. The other beautiful thing about him and the position he's in is that from his right hand he will save. And Our Lady is seated at his right. And a really important part of this image was Bishop Chads was very aware of the Dakota uprising that happened in New Ulm and wanted a piece that could communicate and almost sort of bring a sense of acknowledgement and healing, which was really, really important for him. And also to hear and using Our Lady as the doorway, the path to dialogue, which was really important. So you might notice here something a little bit different than your normal Marian image. So seated on Christ, he holds an oversized gospel. This gospel, the bishop specifically chose all of the flowers, specifically that come from the Prairie. But it is a blend of the Dakota and the Ojibwe beadwork. So we spent many, many hours. Just to give you an idea, I spent 3 weeks just on the book cover alone. And we carefully developed and copied and integrated the Dakotas. But a beautiful part to this, I will say, is that you might see a cross down here. This shows the power of the resurrection. And through this power, Christ brings redemption and healing through the wounds. So Christ is holding this book. He's enveloping it, and he's holding the pains, the wounds, the challenges that have been in the past, but giving them grace, dignity, and healing through his hands. Also on the cover, we have the Alpha and the Omega, which shows Christ as the beginning and at the end of time. And that through the power of the Holy Spirit that overshadowed Our Lady, and that also brought a renewed Pentecost to the church, that the Holy Spirit almost drives forth the evangelization, the living word of God into the communities, into the hearts of New Ulm. There is another element on here that the bishop and we had a conversation actually in this church almost a year ago with our Hispanic communities here. And we had a beautiful dialogue, and we asked what would be a symbol for the Hispanic community. And we weren't sure. The agreement was, well, use if you can incorporate Our Lady of Guadalupe somehow, it would be amazing. So I spent a lot of time in prayer and asking Our Lady, what do you want? What part? So what happened is we developed this. So in the original tilma, Our Lady is got the black sash, you might know, and that shows that she is pregnant. In this image, it shows that Christ is born, Christ is alive, she is no longer pregnant, but she is, it's showing Christ present with us. So we've got the pattern from Our Lady Guadalupe's sash. We've got the blue for the tilma and the 12 stars from her halo in here. And it directly connects her to Our Lady of the Americas, apostrophe S. Then I did quite a bit of research and discovered that throughout the whole of the Americas, I'm going to put apostrophe S, not just North America, but South America as well, that there's a white cloth that has been used through the whole region. So by putting her in white also shows a sign of unity. The bishop really wanted to emphasize the rosary, so we've got the rosary as her spiritual weapon. So all our prayers, all our devotion to Our Lady leads us back to Christ. So the foundation of our faith is based up here. The other thing, which is kind of beautiful, is that we decided that I didn't want to put a red line. So you might see in iconography, there's a red line that runs through the painting sometimes that divides it. So what we chose not to do is we put the halos as joint. So it shows Our Lady as co-mediatrix. You can't have Our Lady without Christ, and you can't have Christ without the Mother. Any true devotion to Our Lady leads you to know the Son, and then the Son will lead you to know His Mother. So it shows the joint love of Christ and His Mother. The other thing that's quite striking is that she's holding Him in a way that on her right hand she has the wheat and the barley that is the essence of the Eucharist, but then the fulfillment of the Eucharist, the physical essence of the Eucharist is Christ. So there's a revelation of the power of the Eucharist that leads and transforms our life. So moving from here downwards, we're going to move down the painting. So if you notice in the painting, all of the fabric that's here, it leads up and it leads down. So all of the graces that comes from the essence of our faith, through the Mother, through Christ, pours down upon the church like the living waters. So the head waters is like the grace that will pour forth upon the Diocese of New Ulm. Then at the base, I'm going to move around. So we've got from the wounds down to the cross. We've got the cross of Christ centered on the hill. But then there's another element which we've added. In the shadow of the cross on the hill, it points downwards. It represents the crucifixion of St. Peter. And the shadow of the cross overshadows St. Peter's. It was fascinating when I was painting St. Peter's Basilica when I first started it. During the painting, Pope Francis passed away. On the final day that I finished it, got up in the morning to finish it, very profoundly we had an American Pope. So St. Peter's has been the bookends of the life of the church, but it profoundly struck me that it's also the life of America. Go figure. And then just below that we've got St. Paul's. So we've got St. Paul's, so we've got the apostolic St. Peter and St. Paul, the two bookends, the two fathers of our faith. Then coming from that, the water here, we have the water that came from the right side of Christ, from Ezekiel, that flows from the temple, from the right side. And from that water brings grace and blessings and fruitfulness. So if you can think about that as the living spring of water that is here in New Ulm, as it brings a renewal of faith to us all. Then down the base, it forms into the Mississippi down the base. And then we have the 3 teepees to represent the culture and the basis of the diocese. And then just in front of them is the 3 fish on there, which are on the crest of the diocese. So the bishop asked for those. Then there's something a little bit unusual in this image that isn't in any other image I have seen. We have got the barn house and the barn, the white barn. This really symbolizes the essence of who you are specifically, regionally, and essentially here. I think you can't really get any more essential than these signs. And I think it's a beautiful opportunity to express, the bishop wanted to show that from the works of our hands, from our faith that has grown here and the prospering of it, Our Lady has come to see us where we are here. Then just a little further across, there is the Church of St. Joseph's, which was a foundational church of your diocese, the little brown building down the top. And then just here at the top, we have New Ulm. So this is the Cathedral of New Ulm. Something different about this image also is that one side is a lighter colour, one side's a darker colour. So when you go back to the Psalms, from the rising of the sun to its setting, which you'll be praying in the Psalms if you pray the Holy, the office, that from the Vatican through to New Ulm, and from New Ulm to the Vatican, there's a connection. And I don't think you can be any more connected than an American Pope, I have to say. The other thing that I did want to mention is the other striking thing, I may have mentioned it earlier, but the darkness of Our Lady. It was a challenging piece to do the darkness, I have to say. I had many, many challenges doing her. But the darkness represents despair, anguish, hopelessness. But if you can see the absolute contrast, and Our Lady is beacon of hope, she stands before the darkness as the mother of all, but also as intercessor to Christ on our behalf. The other interesting thing is, the image has actually been created on a door. Why? First of all, for practical reasons. Doors are very tough and they don't get damaged. But I was concerned about warping. Another theological thing is, Our Lady is the pathway. She's the door that leads us to Christ. And as Pope John Paul II said, throw open your doors to Christ. So she is the way, the vehicle that leads us to know Christ in a deeper way. It wasn't long before, when I nearly had her finished, we had some challenges, to say it lightly. 2 days before, 2 weeks, I stand corrected, 2 weeks before she was about to leave, I walked into the studio and there was a bee buzzing around and she was lying down, looking fantastic, nearly prepared. And this bumblebee sprayed liquid all over the gold paint, the gold leaf, and destroyed it. So I had to carefully clean it all off and start preparing it. So it was a bit of a nightmare. Something else beyond human telling happened. I called DHL. I said, Bishop, we're ready to go. And I said, hey, look, we've got this painting. She needs to get to America. We've got a bit of a deadline. We need her to go. And they said, sorry, Damien, we're not shipping to America at the moment. There's a tariff from the United States and everything's been turned around at the border and not sent back. And I said, are you kidding me? Yes. There's a couple of Hail Marys and some very desperate direct words with the Lord, I have to say. And I contacted the bishop, and the bishop said, okay, let's pray. 2 hours later, I got an email saying, "Dear Damien, you could almost call it an act of God. The tariffs have been lifted for the first time in 3 months. She is ready to go." Go figure. But then along the way, even getting to New Ulm, we had challenges. She was stopped about 3 times. She should have been here in 72 hours. She took 2 weeks. She just kept getting stopped and stopped and stopped and stopped and stopped and stopped. For some reason, God only knows, she wasn't here quite on time, but that's all right. But I'll tell you something interesting. One of the guidelines, or the timeline of her was, we started on the feast day of Our Lady of the Rosary. And she was completed and finished by God's grace and the act of God only on the feast day of Our Lady of Fatima. From the Battle of Lepanto to Fatima. Battle images. Images that challenge our faith, but also I think it's a profound reminder to us that she is with us and she's willing to pour her graces upon us, which I think is incredible. When I'm talking about these images, or the image, for me it's almost quite personal, because I've spent months looking at her, hours and hours and hours and hours. My time painting her was a little bit strange. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, so I'd start about 7 p.m. at night time, New Zealand time, and I'd paint until about 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, because it was the best light. I was going through summertime and drying challenges, but it was at that time, it was the quietest that I could just sit and communicate with her and see what she wanted to reveal. So, my prayer really would be that, and desire really, would be that when you see her, you see the mother. You see not just an icon, but she's here to see you where you are. If you see the way that she eyeballs you, she sees you and she knows you. She hears your heart. She hears the cries of the heart. Christ alone almost can be too fierce, but through the love that Our Lady has, she may draw you to Christ, to know Him. Yes, He is fierce, but He's also the God of mercy, not just justice. And that through the love of the Mother, Our Lady of the Prairie, she may bring you to know the heart of Christ, to know the Eucharist, to deepen your faith, and really bring graces and the seed of faith to all the hearts here. So that would be my prayer, my desire. And yeah, I just thank you so much for the experience, for welcoming me so beautifully here. I'm so grateful for everything, all the time, the hospitality, and meeting every one of you. It's been my privilege. So yeah, Our Lady of the Prairies. We've got time for a few questions, Leonard? Yeah. So if you would like to ask anything, go ahead.
So how big is the actual image?
Well, after walking today and soaking up all the moisture that we have, I tell you what, now I can understand why your plants grow so well. Okay. I'm going to need someone to translate this for me. I don't speak yards and inches. She is 2 meters 70. If anyone can work that out. 2 meters 20 she is. So about that big by about, yeah, that wide. I can know that because I was painting. So yeah, about that wide. And the way I painted it, I forgot to say, was I used the Illo-Byzantine and the Italian style of painting. So Fra Angelico, Giotto, Michelangelo, they used a specific fresco technique. So you're actually not just seeing one color. To give you some perspective, there's over 80 white tones just in her dress. Not just one, you're seeing multiple tones. And what I do is I build up by very fine glaze, by fine glaze, by fine glaze. And then I heat it up, cool it down, heat it up, cool it down. So it gives you a translucency and a depth. So when you're looking at her, you're not just looking at one layer of paint, you're looking at about 30 or 40 layers, slowly, finely built up. And also, if you look at her, even her robes, the way they form, it's like almost the veil of the temple. It's a very delicate, fine material. And also, she is standing on the moon for the book of Revelation as well. Yeah.
I did the math and it would be 7 feet 7.12 feet.
7.12 feet. Is that helpful? There we go. Thank you. See, thank you for not speaking my language. Thank you. I appreciate it. Any other questions? Yeah.
Is Our Lady and Jesus, are they painted after someone that you connected them, their images with? Or
No one.
made out with
The way I did it was, the bishop and I were talking about this, and it was us sort of laughing a little bit, but she revealed herself through the brush. She painted. So if you think she's ugly, I take full responsibility, 100% responsibility. If she is beautiful, it flew through the brush and it comes from God. But if it is not and you find it repulsive, I take full and utter responsibility. So yes, it was when I was painting her, it was quite interesting. It was a revelation through the brush. It just flew. One night, I did have an experience. One night I was painting and it just wasn't there. And I wasn't happy. It just wasn't looking right. And I was frustrated. And I kind of said to Jesus and Mary, sort it out. And I left the studio. Came back in the morning and I don't know what happened. But the next day the paint flew and it just finished. So thank you, sisters, as well for your prayers. The sisters have been praying for it because we had some pretty dicey moments with challenges, and really appreciative for the prayer, sisters. Thank you.
Did you have one aspect of the theology that was your favorite to bring to life?
The most challenging aspect was the faces, because his face was a challenge. It took me countless hours. Like I repainted them, it just wasn't working. But probably the two favorites I would have to say would be, well, the cultural aspects. These two parts were beautiful. One of the challenging parts I would have to say was actually doing the gospel cover, because it didn't matter how hard I was doing, it kept failing and it wasn't working and it wasn't working and it wasn't working. Something I forgot to mention was, so Bishop Chad came to New Zealand. So he wanted to make sure it was perfect for you guys, and he wouldn't accept it if it wasn't right. So Bishop Chad came to New Zealand, and when she was about 3/4 done, so what happened was he sat with me in the studio and sat in front of her, and he helped me complete it. So he's been incredible. So every element, every detail, he can speak for hours on. This image is designed to be a living homily. So the bishop helped me develop the book. He designed the whole diocese in New Ulm down there, just to let you know. Exactly where every building was placed, the bishop instructed it to go there. But one of my favourite things happened was the crucifixion, the cross, because my brush literally slipped as I was painting the crucifix, and it went down like that, and it went across, and I sent a photo to the bishop. He's like, great, there's St. Peter's. So there's some beauty in that. Sometimes artistic mistakes can create theology, believe it or not. Last question. I think we'll wrap that up. So once again, thank you honestly so much for the privilege of being able to speak with you and spend time with you tonight. And listen to me and my accent. I know it's a challenge, so if you can understand about a quarter of what I say, I appreciate it. But yeah, no, thank you so much. And yeah, she's with you hopefully till the end of time. So yeah, I look forward to catching up with you after. Yeah.
I would like to just really thank you for coming all this way. As you explained the picture, it really means much more to me. Just looking at it myself, I wouldn't be able to kind of come up with things that you shared. So really, every time I see that painting, I'll get more out of it probably, and much more than if you weren't here. So thank you for coming this way and explaining that.
No problem. Thank you for accepting a Kiwi. Thank you.